comes in every year.
I know people like to call Jared Hayne the Hayne plane. Well, if he is a plane, he's a fucking Malaysian one. I know everyone says Cameron Smith is the best hooker ever, but for mine, he was no Brad Drew. Sam Burgess always reminds me of that group Fountains of Wayne, because it just makes you think of being horny about someone's mum. Hello listeners, and welcome to the very first episode of the Voluntary Podcast, talking everything rugby league and NRL. How would I describe it? I'd say it's just as entertaining as normal rugby league commentary, but just far more Jackson Hastings. So I'm hoping that resonates with people. Now, just to address a few things early on, I'm new to this. I'm new to the podcasting media, so bear with me. But I know straight away there's going to be a few immediate questions for anyone that's had the misfortune to click on this link. The first one being, why are you starting an NRL podcast in August, you dickhead? To which I would say two things. Don't call me a dickhead, because that's beneath you. And secondly, you're right. It's an odd call. It's certainly going to leave me with not a lot to talk about past grand final day. Feeling good, though, that maybe I will come up with something in the off-season. Probably, talk about the lesser likes of the game. I don't know, Tim Mander comes to mind. We could reminisce about Ronnie Palmer. So there will be lots to talk about, but I will ask you to bear with me for a lot of that time. Now, I guess to get straight into it, I want to talk about Jared Hayne. Now, Jared Hayne, in case you've been living under a rock, or if you're in the Gold Coast, coked out of your head, you would have heard about Jared Hayne's run-in with the Gold Coast Titans coach, Neil Henry. Now, there's been a lot of hate for Jared over this, understandably. He's murdered 7 coaches. But I would like to defend him somewhat, because I think Jared is just someone who needs to play for a team that he really believes in, which is why I'm proposing that he should start his own franchise called the Jared Hayne Planes. That way he can feel really emotionally invested in the team that he plays for, because it's not his fault, Jared. It's really not his fault. He's got a big heart and pay packet, obviously. But, he just needs to feel loved, like all of us. And, if he was playing for a team that actually had his own head as the emblem, I would imagine he'd, feel a lot better about himself. But it is tough, isn't it? I was thinking about Neil Henry this week, and I'm going to confess I've never thought about Neil Henry before this week. Just he's not the kind of guy you think about. But it must be pretty awful for a guy like Neil, who, to be fair to him, everyone before this year was talking about how he's an underrated coach and, he's done a good job with the Titans up there. And then Jared comes along and just literally burns down the club. It must be tough. It must feel like, I don't know, someone who's just started a new family, has a great wife. If it's Neil Henry, not a great wife, a solid wife, gets the job done. Just popped out a few kids, he has a steady job, and then suddenly your home gets ransacked by a high-profile narcissist who burns all of your clothes, takes your job, and starts having consensual sex with your wife. It must be awful. All I'm saying is we need to spare a thought for the Neil Henrys of this world, and I wish him the best of luck in whatever his future career is. I mean, he's gone, let's face it. He won't be there for much longer. And, God rest your soul, Neil.
Drop the ball, Gus.
No.
We've gone off half-cocked.
No.
Sit down. There is no party.
Now, it occurs to me, listeners, that you may not know who I am. I forgot to introduce myself, be it so early in my career as a podcaster. My name is Eamon Brown. You don't really need to know my name particularly, because I'm not famous. I'm a nobody, essentially. But I do like the game of rugby league, and I love watching my NRL. But I do feel as though it was important that I got my name out of the way in case you ever wanted to litigate me. The next topic I'd like to talk about in rugby league are the Newcastle Knights. Now, I'm posing a question to the listeners, all four of you. Is it me or are the Newcastle Knights buying everyone next year? Feels like they've just purchased everyone. Like, I mean, I know they've been struggling and they've had money under the cap, but every day I read about rugby league, the Knights have just purchased another person. What is it? You got Kalen Ponga at fullback. I read today Todd Carney is coming to the club. Todd Carney in Newcastle. What could go wrong? What have they got? Connor Watson, Aiden Guerra, SKD. They've got a couple of guys from the Broncos, isn't it? Moga. They've lost Gagai, which is it's a genuine loss. But I mean, essentially, they've kind of purchased everyone, and they're still talking about people to purchase. So my question is, Newcastle, where is this money coming from? Because we know Nathan Tinkler is gone. Quite literally, he's in Singapore. Is it Adam McDougall's Manshake? Is that where all the money's coming from? Are the Knights buying players essentially on the back of milk, protein and ram's blood? You know, a rebuilding phase, there's an etiquette that goes along with a rebuild. Hats off, though. I know you bought Aiden Guerra. That was a bit of a sympathy buy. So you're not exposing yourself too much. But you have bought a lot of people. I mean, the Knights must be a genuine threat next year. They've got everyone. And it is about time. They haven't had a lot of love over the past, 5 or 6 years. But it does concern me a little bit. I kind of feel like, are you just paying everyone like $8 each or something? Like, I don't know if you can buy that many people. Presumably you can sort of buy Todd Carney off in, some kind of illicit drug that might get you under the cap. I'd hate to see what his third-party agreement is. But good on you, Knights. I'm sure you're going to be competitive in 2018. But I'm just saying, stop buying people. Like, you should stop it now. End it. Because pretty soon you're just going to be buying people for the sake of it. Like Todd Greenberg to be your physio.
Drop the ball, Gus.
No.
We've gone off half-cocked.
No.
Sit down. There is no party.
So I'm sure you've heard by now that Benji Marshall is returning to the Tigers after all these years. Now, I'm actually a fan of Benji. I think he's copped a lot of unnecessary criticism over the last couple of years. I thought, okay, he was terrible at Union. Agreed. Not going to argue that. But when he went to the Dragons a couple of years ago, he was actually quite good. I think he was their players' player the first year. The second year, he had a whole bunch of injuries. The team was awful. And everyone just sort of seemed to ping it on Benji Marshall. But no, I think he has a lot to offer, actually. I think he's going to offer a lot of value to the Tigers next year. But my question is, I wonder what it would be like turning up to training again for Benji, because he left the club on pretty bad terms. I suppose in a way, it could feel a bit like Robbie Farah turning up to Jason Taylor's 50th. It'd be inappropriate, weird, and, well, let's face it, quite funny. I wonder if it might just be a good idea for him not to mention it, the fact that he's been gone for like 5 seasons. But no, I think Benji has been, he's playing some really good football for the Broncos at the moment. My only concern, though, with Benji is the fact that although he has been playing good football for the Broncos, he's only really been doing that in sort of 4.5-minute bursts off the bench. And I'm not sure if the modern game can really accommodate a player in your 17 who only comes on for the same amount of time as it takes to boil a hard egg.
Drop the ball, Gus.
No.
We've gone off half-cocked.
No.
Sit down. There is no party.
How good must it be to be a Storm fan? I always think about this. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm not a Storm fan. I go for the Sydney Roosters and occasionally for the Newtown Jets. Like turning up at Henson. It's good fun. But to be a Melbourne Storm fan, I do think about it because you just don't have bad years. It must be nice. Like, any time anyone comes up to you and goes, "Oh, how's your team going this year, mate?" Just go, "Excellent." finals again. And got a more than 50% chance of going all the way. Thanks a lot. How's your team going? Oh, they're shit. Thanks, fuckface. They're going awful. But I was thinking how nice, the other day, though, it occurred to me, and I had this nice realisation that the Melbourne Storm, the Holy Trinity, will be retiring soon. You've got Cooper Cronk, Cameron Smith, Billy Slater, all roughly the same age. We know Cooper's going next year, and you kind of get the sense that Cameron Smith, as amazing as he is, and Billy Slater, as amazing as he is, they can't play forever. So their time is limited. So I've been comforting myself with the knowledge that one day the Melbourne Storm will be shit. However, then I thought about what happened during the Origin period this year. And I remember all of their freaks were out, and these new freaks came in. Guys like Brodie Croft, Hughes. Oh yeah, and that's right, Munster for the next 20 years. And then I got irritated again. I got angry again. Because I thought they're not going to be shit. It's just they're going to be the same freaks with different names. They're just like a brand. It's all the different iPhones. And you kind of get the sense that maybe Craig Bellamy is sort of just churning these fuckers out at a factory somewhere. Oh, we need another guy like Cooper Cronk. He's off to Sydney. Brodie Croft, put some good vision on him and get him a 30-metre passing game. Thanks. I hate you, Storm.
Drop the ball, Gus.
No.
We've gone off half-cocked.
No.
Sit down. There is no party.
It's time to talk about the New Zealand Warriors. And every year, it's no secret, every year everyone talks about how good the Warriors are going to be. Pre-season, it's the same story every year. And they never start off well, and they always have that same resurgent period, middle of the season, when everyone's away playing Origin, which makes a lot of sense. And they carve, and then they get in finals contention, and then they sort of drop away like an old person having a stroke. And I basically want to have a bit of a rant about why do we think this every year? We know they're going to come 11th, tops. Okay, the last couple of years they've had a good spine. Okay, but it's not a complete team. Okay, so this is what I say to people. I say, well, okay, they've got a good spine. But do you build a team around people like Ben Matulino? You don't go, Ben Matulino, he's training the house down. I can smell a comp. He's average at best. So I thought it pertinent in this podcast to give the Warriors some advice, okay? And it goes a little like this. If I was to write a memo to the Warriors players, I would be saying, hey guys, love your colours. Say hi to whatever coach you've got at the moment, because you know they're only there annually. And I'd say, look, Warriors, you're talented, but to play NRL and be successful in it, you have to be more than just look scary, strong and intimidating. It's not enough to win games. Your forward pack always looks like it could grab the opposing side's forward pack by the throats and rip out their hearts and entrails and then eat them. But guess what? You never do. Your pack is meek, and I'm just going to say this, they're way too polite. Has anyone ever noticed that after the game? These huge Maori guys are interviewed in the post-match, and they're always really polite. It's like they look like they could just take over the Seven Kingdoms in the Game of Thrones. But then when they talk, they're like, yeah, bro, they just got over the top of us in the last 20 and, we made too many mistakes. Well, stop being so polite. Fire up. You're huge. I don't know if they are aware of this, but you're physically superior to white men. You're better than us. It's an easy solution. Get angry, try hard, then you win. That's my memo to the Warriors.
Drop the ball, Gus.
No.
We've gone off half-cocked.
No.
Sit down. There is no party.
Okay, so now it's the time in the podcast where it's I get to go through the games, give you my predictions, see how I see things going. And now, if you don't know this, but the Titans-Parramatta game's already been done. That happened last night. We all knew how that was going to go anyway, so it's no big loss. But so I'm going to start off with the Friday night game, the first one at 6, which is the Rabbitohs versus the Warriors. This isn't one to masturbate over, is it? This is not what you'd call an exciting game. Neither team are in contention. The Warriors have few guys that are actually trying anymore. And one of the few guys that was Nathaniel Roach. He's out. So you don't even get to be excited about that. For Souths, again, I mean, can you really get excited about Bryson Goodwin and, that guy with the man bun? What's his name? Tyrell Fumanano? Or no, I'm getting that wrong. Got a guy on the wing called Campbell Graham. Don't know him. Interesting story about the Rabbitohs this year that no one's really talked about. Damien Cook and Robbie Farah. If you're Damien Cook, you're not happy about this year, are you? This was Damien Cook's breakout year, essentially. And Robbie Farah went, no, I'm going to start. Even though you're a lot faster, you're more dangerous, you're more likely to crack the line. I'm Robbie Farah. And so there's been this tussle all year to see who would play hooker. And I noticed this game, Damien Cook is starting, according to the team sheet. Robbie Farah on the bench. Robbie Farah is a good player. If Robbie Farah knew just how selfish he is as a player, he would stop doing it and he'd be one of the greats. Because his skill set's amazing. He passes, he's got great service, he's actually got a very good kicking game, he defends well. He's just selfish. Even to the point where he treads all over Damien Cook's career. Anyway, that's my little rant on that game. That's the Rabbitohs-Warriors game. Rabbitohs to win that one, I'd say, by 12 to 14 points. That's followed up by the Broncos-Dragons match. Now, bear with me, I'm using old world technology to look up the games. Benji Marshall is in. He'll probably have a very strong 4.5 minutes again for the Broncos. Broncos on a bit of a run at the moment, I have to say. I think this will be a fairly decent match. The Dragons are obviously playing for their lives. Dropped just out of the 8. I think they're sitting in 9th. So they've been in the top 8 all year. And now it's just hit business end. They've just dropped out. Kurt Mann in the halves with Widdop. I think they've been playing around with different combinations there. They've had Josh McCrone there for a little bit. As is the case with Josh, it doesn't usually work out. So they are going with Kurt Mann in the 7. Matt Duffy at the back, he's an exciting prospect for the Dragons. I think he's a player on the rise. Might cause the Broncos a few problems, but I think the Broncos should be too strong, I'd imagine, particularly up there at Suncorp. I'd say the Broncos to win by about 10. Then on Saturday, we've got the Knights v the Storm. Now, the Knights are shooting for 4 in a row. Now, there is an unlikely sentence. Making that statement a month ago would have sounded as egregious as saying, that Brian Smith bloke, he seems like a good person and not a complete head case. Now, the last time they met, I think it was about 108-0. So the Knights obviously looking to mitigate the damage this time around. They'll be far more competitive this time around. They're playing in their home stadium of McDonald Jones Stadium. Catchy name. Looking for Ken Seo to have an average game. But as is the case of the Melbourne Storm, you can imagine they will probably play not at their best, but just enough to beat our competitive and plucky Knights by about 8 points. Moving on to the Roosters-Tigers game. Now, on form, I would be inclined to say that the Tigers will win this game. I think the Tigers have actually been playing quite well in the last month. And the Roosters have had a mixed bag. They had they're probably their best match of the season last week against the Storm, even though they lost. But by the by, they've been, I think, quite inconsistent game to game in terms of the energy they bring. So I would have normally thought about tipping the Tigers in this match. But I don't know if anyone's aware, I don't think the Tigers ever beat the Roosters. It's their bogey team of bogey teams. They just hate playing them. You kind of get the feeling that the Roosters could name 17 Danny DeVitos and still somehow come away with a win against the Tigers. So for that reason, I have to lean with the Roosters, even though it's against all my normal intuitions. That brings us to the Cowboys-Sharks game. I think this will be an interesting game, this one. This is a real coin toss for me. Up there, the Cowboys playing for their lives. The Sharks sort of as well, to be honest. They're sitting up there at the top 4 at the moment, but a loss could see them drift right down to the bottom half of the 8. So in a lot of senses, this is a real finals game. And I think it's up there. I think that the Cowboys, even though they've got no JT and they've had a few shaky weeks, I think they're going to be tough to beat. And they've brought Kalen Ponga into the team, who hasn't had many games this year, and I think is, a future freak. So I'm actually leaning with the Cowboys on this one in a very tight match. I'm going to go Cowboys by a field goal. That brings us to the Sunday matches. We've got the Raiders versus the Panthers. This is probably the game of the week. Both teams on a big run. Let's have a look here at the stats. Let's see how many they've won recently. Yeah, the Panthers have won 5 in a row, and the Raiders have won 4 out of 5 and lost only to the Storm in a good match. I've just got this feeling that the Raiders will get them. I know they're at home. That always helps. Also, just kind of get the feeling Joey Lalua might just eat Edwards, like quite literally consume him because he's just so full of ill-disciplined rage. So that alone would be reason enough to tune in. Which brings us to the last game of the round, one that you can't get particularly excited about, I have to admit, because any game involving the Bulldogs this year is by definition not exciting. They take on the Manly Sea Eagles. The Manly Sea Eagles, I'd imagine, should account for them fairly easily. And from memory, they kicked the Bulldogs' ass by about 40 points earlier in the year. The Bulldogs, they are literally the most boring team I've ever seen. Why are they so boring? I can't watch them. I love watching footy games. I love the NRL. When I see the Bulldogs take on anyone outside of the 8, I don't care. I won't watch. I don't care. I don't even really keep tabs on the results, because I already know what they are. Like, the other team wins and the Bulldogs get 4 points because they only score 1 try a match. Which is what happens when you put Moses Mbai and Michael Leisha in the same team.
Drop the ball, Gus.
No.
We've gone off half-cocked.
No.
Sit down. There is no party.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of the show. You've been listening to the Voluntary Tackle Podcast with Eamon Brown. Hope you enjoyed. If you want to stay abreast of any future episodes, you can subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Also, keep up to date on Twitter and Facebook. But until next week, just do what Greg Bird would do and knee someone in the spine. See ya. I heard that when Gavin Badger proposed to his fiancée, she said yes, and he was like really sad because he'd missed the answer. You just know that if Cameron Smith was ever on Australian Ninja Warrior, he'd win the whole thing without ever legally completing a single obstacle. I believe this. I say Mitch Pearce could be an immortal if they just subbed him off whenever the game meant anything.